Hi, Editing India here to tell you what exactly is going on in this video. So in 2021, I pre-filmed a bunch of videos, and I pre-filmed videos that were going over the books that I had read in that had covers that were a certain color. And I pre-filmed those because I thought throughout 2021, I was going to be doing my series where I'm reading books in a different color. I'm picking that up now, but I'm not willing to refilm those videos. Actually, watching this video back was really useful for me and being like, oh, I have not changed that much. And I have changed a lot. Like, 2021 India was so cute. And yeah, it's just interesting to see. Anyway, right now I want to talk to you about some yellow books that I've read since 2021 that I have really enjoyed. And then Past Me is going to talk about some yellow books and talk about a lot of things, honestly. But Past Me is then going to take over and talk about stuff. And then later you're going to see a vlog from me where I'm reading some yellow books that I'm looking forward to. So I'm on my story graph and I'm looking at 2021. So the first yellow book that I come across is the Xenofeminist Manifesto, A Politics for Alienation. This is a tiny book that I do still have by Laboria Cubanics, which is, I think, a collective. Wow. I did not understand this manifesto at all, but it's so cool. It's so cool to look at. I love the way it's published. But yeah, the idea of alienation, the idea of arguing for alienship was very interesting. Let's see. Then we have... Ooh, I'm Glad My Mom Died has a yellow cover by Jeanette McCurdy. This is Jeanette McCurdy's memoir about her experience with her mother, and particularly her experience working as a child actress, and some of the really awful traumatic things that she endured, and how rough that was for her. I forgot that had a yellow cover. I forget that I read that. That's a really good one. Ooh, okay. The poetry collection Husbandry by Matthew Dickman. Really love. I love how much it's about selfhood. It's about what it means to be a father, what it means to love, and it's just really good poetry collection. And I feel like with poetry, I either am it's okay, or I'm yes, really love that. Oh, I read The Yellow Wallpaper. The Yellow Wallpaper is a classic. It's about a woman who is going mad a little bit, and it's unsure whether she started out mad or if she turned mad. Unclear. Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward is a Dante's Inferno retelling, I guess, but put in the perspective of enslaved people who are being relocated during slave era America. Yeah, so it's about chattel slavery, right? That's the term. Let's see, I think that might be it. I think that might be all the yellow books I have. Ooh, okay, no. The Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel is a history of art, an art history book, but looking at, if we only looked at women's contributions to art, what would it look like? And that was a really solid listen as well. Another history book, The Swans of Harlem, 5 Black Ballerinas, 50 Years of Sisterhood and Their Reclamation of a Groundbreaking History by Karen Valby. This is kind of like an oral history about the Harlem Ballet Company. I think that's what it's called. It might have been something else. And these prima ballerinas who were part of this ballet company and who were really the first Black prima ballerinas, and thinking about this history kind of thinks about, like, oh, we know Misty Copeland, but, like, look at these Black ballerinas. So that was a really cool read. If you love ballet, I highly recommend. Oh, I don't know if this is yellow or green, but I just finished reading The First Rule of Punk by Celia C. Perez. I read this for the school that I work at, and this is really sweet. It's about a girl who is kind of trying to find her place in the world, trying to come to terms with her identity and who she is. She, like, is Mexican American, and she really identifies with being punk, and she's trying to figure out what being punk means. She's a middle schooler, and she moves to this new city, this new place, and is, like, starting to connect with people, and it's, like, really solid, really sweet. Okay, those are the yellow books I have to talk to you about. Now, let's hand the mic over to Past Me. Hello, India from the past here to talk about yellow books. I'm wearing basically, like, my favorite shirt, one of my favorite articles of clothing. It just makes me feel like Rococo wallpaper. I didn't know that that was a thing that I wanted to feel like, but it's really long and oversized and beautiful, and just, like, I found at a thrift store during a trip to the Oregon coast with a friend, and it was beautiful. Right, I have some yellow eyeliner on, which you can't super see, but I think it's cute. These earrings are mostly green, but do have some yellow. My socks have some yellow in them, but again, the theme of this video is yellow's a tough one. Maybe I just don't like yellow books. I don't know. Let's finish up me talking about the things that are yellow that I'm surrounded by. This is a plant. We've got a little yellow candle. Let's light this. Which I think, like, has a purpose. It's, like, supposed to be an intention candle that someone gave me. I have this old handkerchief that has, like, flowers and a yellow border. I'll put that right here. I dug out from the kitchen. My brother and I have given my mom 2 separate honey pots, which she doesn't use. The top of this one fell off, and would make a really cute planter. And then this one's really adorable because the top of it is also the little, like, honey thing. I don't know. Yeah. Is that... Oh, and lastly, yellow things, is this little music box that plays The Entertainer. I'm gonna stop that there. Okay, so there are 3 categories. 1, books I really like and I'm excited to talk to you about. 2, books that are kind of yellow that I like and would like to talk about. And 3, books that are actually yellow that don't fit in the first category, even though the first category is not very yellow. Don't fit in the first category. I enjoyed them. I still am holding on to them, but they're not, like, my favorite books. So let's jump into that first category of books I love that are somewhat yellow. We're gonna start with Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. Is this yellow or is this orange? Honestly, it's a lot of colors, but I'm going with yellow because this is my channel and I make the rules. Maybe I don't make the color rules, but this is Jeanette Winterson's first novel, I believe, and is somewhat autobiographical, tells the story of a young girl, Jeanette, who is discovering her sexuality and experiencing, like, living in a highly religious household that doesn't accept that. her mother tries to exorcise the gay away. I think this is like a staple of queer literature, of lesbian literature, and I read it like soon after I came out because of such things. This is actually not that OG copy, because that OG copy ended up going to a friend of mine who was like, hey, I think I'm questioning my sexuality, and I was like, take this, give it back to me please, but take this, and go for it. Never to be seen again. And I was like, you know what, that's okay, because I have the power to buy books, even though maybe that power should be revoked sometimes. Anyway, oranges are not the only fruit. It's due for a reread, because I love Jeanette Winterson. Written on the Body was one of my favorite books last year, and it's amazing. The next book, I don't know if I'm allowed to show up or hold up for the entirety of the time that I'm going to be talking about it, so I'm just going to show you. I mean, it probably would be fine. I'm just paranoid. But also, who cares? And that is Venus in Furs by Leopold von forgive my pronunciation of his name. Sachermasoch. I'm sorry. I'm not German. I have trouble pronouncing certain names. This is a piece of classic erotic fiction, which I read for a class that I took when I was studying abroad in London about erotic literature. And that's like my favorite fun fact to tell people about my undergrad experience. Mostly because it was a really fun class. But this book is like kind of the classic like foundation of like masochistic literature. Masochism comes from said author's name. But it's about a guy who's obsessed with this lady, and masochism ensues in their romantic and sexual relationship. This book holds a really special place in my heart because I wrote an essay, like my final essay for that class, on laughter as like a indication of power and the way that laughter interacts with like masochistic sexual relationships in this book and in like other things. And I was super proud of that essay. It made me like, sometimes I love a book because I feel really excited about the way that I can articulate myself writing about it, and I think that's valid. But these are like, I tabbed all these moments where this main lady, whose name I really don't remember, is laughing at this guy, and the way that it's part of the pleasure of power imbalances that are maybe not so consensual in that book, but next up, let's talk about the books that are actually yellow. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna be brief with a lot of these, starting with Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. This is very yellow, and is like the second book of the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland books, so following Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I guess this is another instance where I wrote a paper or like presented, and the book was involved. I gave a presentation, or I made a zine. Ooh, do I have that zine somewhere? I do! Wait, I can show you this. It's kind of a little bit cringy because my design and editing skills were very low, but this is a zine that I made for my Victorian literature class, in which we read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And it's called Who Are You? We're All Mad Here, Cassandra's Dangerous Women. And this is just me looking at the different female characters that we read in that class, and specifically the ones who are like coded or deemed mad, and what that says about people. And I did some drawings that are kind of funny. I did some embroidery. I wrote some poetry. It was a good time. But one of the oh, this is not accurate. Is it? One of the things that I wrote about was the amount of times that Alice is asked to define herself, or she's asked who she is in Wonderland, and the way that that mirrors, and the way that that is an element of like queerness and reflects like queer identities and the experience of queer people who are constantly asked to like come out or define themselves, and also kind of this way to look at it and re-emphasize the importance of like questioning and of not knowing. So I gave a presentation on that for the symposium about gender studies, and it was a fun time. Now that we're done with that tangent, let's do T.S. Eliot selected poems. This was my grandpa's book. My grandparents have a lot of duplicates of books, and this was one of them, which I didn't expect because mostly they have like duplicates of Louise Erdrich books and Wallace Stegner. But I found this, and one of their copies was like very heavily annotated, and this one was not, so I took this one, even though it has some like dog bite marks. I think those are dogs. It looks I don't know. Anyway, T.S. Eliot, a poet I've read numerous times in both my high school and college English literature career. Career is a bit of a stretch with that one. But it is yellow. It has The Hollow Men, which is a poem that made me cry in my senior English class, and was very sad. Next, Something Bright Then Holes by Maggie Nelson. This is a collection of poetry that I didn't like. I really enjoy Maggie Nelson's nonfiction writing, and so I was like, oh, I'll enjoy her poetry. I didn't, and that's okay. But it's yellow. The theme is they're yellow. Here you go. Jacob's Room has a yellow spine by Virginia Woolf. Again, another book I read for a class. Jacob's Room is about Jacob, and yeah, and pre-World War I London, and kind of him being a young man doing his thing. Fun tidbit about that one. I did write an essay on it that wasn't very good, about horses and horsepower and Suzuki. But more importantly, my final project for that class was creative, and you can watch it if you're interested. It was a process of collecting lines from the different books that we read in that class, and I created this like collage script, which I had friends of mine and acquaintances read, and then I created a collage of different voices reading that script, and I made a dance video about it. So if you want to watch it, you're more than welcome to. It was definitely a very COVID, it definitely, like, as far as like art stuff goes, very clearly COVID inspired. I had non-COVID plans for it, which clearly did not happen. But it's interesting if you want to watch it. And I ended up giving a presentation about that with my professor, kind of concerning modernism and dance. And yeah. I swear this video wasn't meant to be me like bragging about presentations I've done. I just kind of really miss school. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This book was on so many people's favorites lists this past year. I am disappointed. I'm sad to say that I don't think I loved this in the way that a lot of other people loved it. I think it, this tells the story of 9 characters, most of whom are Black and most of whom are women, and just like their experience living mostly in the UK. Some of them are from Nigeria, some of them end up moving to the US, but this story is amazing. Like, everyone who says it's good is correct. I think for me, I just, like, there was a level of disconnect where I was like, yeah, this is a really good book, but I don't think I love it as much as everyone else does, for whatever, like, unexplainable reason. But I would still recommend this. Yeah, it's written in a really interesting way, in the sense that there are very few punctuation marks. There's not that much punctuation, so it reads in this verse-like way, without being a novel written in verse. So if that's something that interests you, if like literary structure and like playing with that is something you like, definitely check it out. Yeah. On to books that are not yellow, but are kind of yellow, and I could talk about. Man, we're really just my literary. Ugh. This edition of Lolita has some yellow on it. My senior seminar / thesis class was on Nabokov. I don't like Nabokov. I very strongly think he's pretentious and annoying and can't stand his writing. But I ended up writing a thesis paper on Lolita and 2 other books, kind of examining the importance, kind of examining father-child relationships through the lens of the Cold War era US and the ideas of the nuclear family and the ideas of children as a way to secure happiness for adults, and kind of all of the problematic things in that, and the way that Nabokov writes children that don't secure happiness for adults in, well, definitely not in the traditional way, if at all. And I couldn't ignore Lolita with that in the pedophilic relationship that is central to the novel. So, moving on. This copy of The Hobbit is really beautiful and makes me think of the animated Hobbit movie. But it's kind of this like greenish gold with like yellow edges. I'm planning on reading The Lord of the Rings this year, maybe, or at least starting it. I would like to start the series. So yeah. These books are really yellowish, but my edition of The Picture of Dorian Gray and Other Writings is in this yellowish Bantam Classics edition. I haven't read the other writings, most of which are plays, but I've read The Picture of Dorian Gray twice. now, and it always makes me think of my dear friend Davis, who collected editions of The Picture of Dorian Gray and was in my Victorian literature class, which I previously mentioned. And I ended up writing about Sybil Vane, who is a actress character in the book, who Dorian despises for silly, silly reasons. Another book that I read in that class was this is not called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is like The Strange Case. Yeah. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Why it doesn't say the full title on the front or the side, I don't know, but it kind of frustrates me. Just a little pet peeve. Again, this is another Victorian classic about Jekyll and Hyde, who were two sides of the same coin, so to speak. Yeah, I didn't say what The Picture of Dorian Gray is about, but it is about Dorian, who is friends with an artist figure, who is friends with a painter, and the painter decides to paint a portrait of Dorian, and mythical shenanigans ensue. Like, Dorian doesn't seem to age. He seems to be beautiful forever. How could that be? Another fun fact about that book, I dressed up as The Picture of Dorian Gray my freshman year of college, which was really fun, and I truly loved it. Like, I carried around a frame, and I did some, like, fun zombie-ish makeup. Next, this is probably the biggest stretch, Postcards from No Man's Land by Aidan Chambers. I want to talk about this because I think this is the first queer lit book that I ever read. I read this in high school, and yeah, I am pretty sure this was the first book I read, and it ends up being a male-male romance, and I was like, hold up, this is new. But this is about a boy who goes to Germany, goes either to France or Germany, and is like discovering these letters from his grandfather to a nurse that cared for him during World War II. And yeah, it's just about like Jacob kind of coming of age, classic coming of age queer story with a bit of like historical background happening. Yes. Jacob isn't prepared for love or to face questions of his sexuality. Yeah. Last book I'm going to talk about is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This was the first Donna Tartt that I read, and I have since read all three of her books. And I think I'd have to reread this in order to say definitively whether this is my favorite or The Little Friend is my favorite. But this is the story of a young boy who is in a museum when like a bomb goes off or like when something happens, and he ends up having this painting that he was looking at in the museum before that happened. And it's about this boy growing up and like who cares for him and like a friendship he makes, and just is, per Donna Tartt's usual writing, pretty dark and sad in like a, I don't want to say angsty way because I think that doesn't do justice to some of the themes, but yeah, it's yellow. It is something that I I realized it is something that I want to reread. It was one of the first books that I read when I moved away to college. Same with Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. Ooh, which means I read that before I came out. Man. I was doing some thinking prior to the knowing, you know? Moving away will do that to you. Anyway, I thought this was going to be real short, but it ended up going into tangents about coming out, presentations, my Victorian literature class. That's fun. So thank you for watching this. Let me know some of your favorite yellow books, especially because I would love some, like, clearly yellow books to love. I have a lot on my TBR that are clearly yellow. Some Zadie Smith, some, is that it? Yeah, we're just gonna mention Zadie Smith's Swing Time, which is a very yellow book. Again, I'm not sure what I'm going to be reading for this vlog, for this installment. But I'm sure it might be good. Who knows? So, yeah. Thank you for watching.